Vern Gambetta, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Thank you for giving up a little bit of your morning to speak to me.
Well, I'm excited to be on, and I've been able to listen to various people on your podcast. You do a really good job, and so it's an honor to be on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It always makes me a little bit nervous when I have someone on who, well, firstly, has done so much as what you've done, but secondly, who's also a podcaster themselves. So I hope I'm not being judged. I've not been judged, but
Well,
thank you for the kind words.
yeah, the podcasting part is. I said to you before we came on, whatever the opposite of a self promoter, a shameless self promoter is, that's what I am, and it's a vehicle to share ideas and information and stimulate thought. Not controversy, but thought. And thank God for Martin Bingasser, who's really great partner, and and pushed me this way, too. So it was, and yeah, it's fun to do because it's a way to meet more people, and that's what it's done, so.
Of course. We had a little chat beforehand about very briefly, about your previous roles as a teacher and the importance of that. And again, I'll say it again, I said it at the time, not to be disrespectful, but the older guys that I have on, the 50 people above 50 who come on the podcast, very often have that background in teaching, whether that be Eddie Jones, as we spoke about, but there's countless other ones, Kelvin Giles, other ones that have been on the podcast as well. How important is that for you? And how often do you probably do it all the time subconsciously, but how often do you call upon that experience as vital for you in your coaching roles?
Invaluable and daily. Whether I'm coaching coaches or hands-on with the athletes, your coaching is teaching. I was trained as a teacher. I didn't realize I really passionately wanted to be a teacher until after my sophomore year in college, and then it was, all, straight ahead, go for it, and and I think the thing is, and you're right, it's about a break point about those of us 50 and over. That was just expected. That and I wasn't as an undergrad. I was a social science major with an emphasis in Latin American history, and a coaching minor. And and then I went on and got my master's in education with an emphasis in physical education. But again, education was, and the foundation of that is pedagogy, the science of teaching. And I think the biggest thing missing today, particularly in the 20 and the coaches in their 40s are kind of stuck. They're halfway in between. Some of them have been exposed, some of them haven't. But the 20 and 30-year age group coaches, not just S&C, but across sports, they're very ultra specialized, and they were not trained as teachers. And so you see real gaps in, you go, whether it's athletic development, strength and conditioning, or whether you go out and you watch a session on the field, you can tell right away. We had to, PE 30A at Fresno State, we had 50 guys, and that shows the time it was in the class. And you had to get them in formation, and you had to, and some of these guys I was 18 years old, they were 25, veterans of, the Army and stuff like that. And so you had to learn how to command attention and progressively, progressions, learn progressions and things like that. Yeah, yeah. And one other thing, Rob, without belaboring this point, the people who taught us, my generation, I'm 74, and pretty much everybody over 60 were the people, the so-called greatest generation. They had either been in the service, in the World War II or the Korean War, and they were and then they went back to school when they were more mature in our country with this thing called the GI Bill. And so, I think back now, what an influence. My high school basketball coach, bless his soul, who I revere today, was a bomber pilot, over Normandy and, and that. And the things that he taught us, life lessons that he taught us in basketball, and the things that he taught us in basketball. I've become friends with Ron Adams, who's a little younger than me, 3 years younger than me, and he's a truth teller in the NBA. He's the coach. He's with the Golden State Warriors. And I was asking, we were talking about stuff, and he says, "Where'd you learn that stuff?" And I said, "My high school basketball coach." And he said the same thing. He said he's teaching things in the NBA that he learned from his high school coach, who was had been trained as a teacher. So long-winded answer, but teaching, and that's the biggest thing we have, and that's one of the biggest goals of the Gain Network is to emphasize is the pedagogical basis of what we do, and to become better teachers, is the key, regardless of what your role is.
So the $1 million question then, Vern, if these kind of things that you've just mentioned are missing for those 20 and 30-year-old guys, how can we get that back in? And what would you recommend from an education point of view that is actually missing, like the X's and O's that are missing in this education pathway that, like you say, these ultra specialized coaches are actually going through and coming out the other end of? What would be your recommendation, given that you had all the power in the world?
If I was kidding. Well, yeah, it would be, first of all, there would be less emphasis on certification and more emphasis on education, so that you'd have to earn the right. If you don't go to 3 weekend workshops and now, you have letters after your name, and there has to be, in-depth learning about pedagogy, how to teach, how to organize, and you have to. I really think when you start out, somehow we have to stop this ultra specialization thing. So you're not a strength coach, you're not a speed coach, you're not an endurance coach. You need to understand how all the components fit together. And so developing some sort of an educational model that addresses this, and sure, it leads to a certificate or accreditation or a degree. But if you look at, in England is a classic example, I spent a lot of time there. In Scotland, you have, you can quote me the numbers, X number, 1,000 sports science people graduating every year. And I've interacted with some of their wonderful young people, young men and women, but they couldn't coach their way out of a wet paper bag. They could recite the Krebs cycle forward and back. They can tell me about how many sets and reps I need to do this. But if you ask them to go out on the field and translate this into reality, they do it, but that's why we have some of the issues we have today in sport with injuries and lack of performance, because we have so much specialization, and we're trying to fit everybody into models, where if you're an educator, you take a step back, you look at the overall situation. I remember teaching history classes where I had kids with an IQ of 80 and an IQ of 170. They were 20 times smarter than me. So how do you hold their attention? And the same thing in the physical realm. Whether you mentioned that you had taught PE, you teach PE, and I had in one gym class, I had 3 best water polo player ever, a professional baseball player that played until he was 46, and then I had a kid who had basically borderline muscular dystrophy, in a class of 40 boys. So how do you handle that? How do you do that? How do you reach everybody? And that's what a teacher has to do.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, not with the baseball and the polo, but with a young boy that had muscular dystrophy, and progressed on to being in a wheelchair later down the line. But that when I look back, and I've not obviously done a fraction of what you've done in your career, but I've been stood in front of a group of 38-year-olds in a PE lesson, expecting to be entertained, excited, and expecting to have some sort of structure. That is a great experience for especially any graduate coming through a degree, just to be in front of that group. Like, you've got a third that probably don't want to be there and hate PE. You've got a couple that absolutely love it. And you've got this big group in between that probably could sway either way. So there's so many things that you have to pick up on, like you said, the emotional intelligence, to pick up on what certain kids need and what certain kids want. I think that's definitely something that especially young coaches, could get so much from just forcing themselves to be in front of a group of young kids. And if you can handle a group of 38-year-olds, when you're in front of 10 athletes who are 25, like, it's a breeze. It's a breeze.
No, that's for sure. One day, quick story, when we in California, where I was raised and did most of my education. So you graduate from college, and then you go postgraduate year to get your teaching certificate. And I went to University of California, Santa Barbara, where I was born and raised. And I had a terrific master teacher, Ruth Wilbert. This little, I wish I could. She had the most amazing Southern accent. She was just a most amazing teacher, amazing person. And she had us go one day. We went from a regular preschool, a Montessori preschool, to an elementary school, to a junior high, and to a high school. She worked it out so we could do that. And I'll never forget walking. And this is a thing for all of you, everybody out there, never say never. And after I got with watching the junior high thing, I said, I'll never teach junior high. Guess what? Next year I'm teaching junior high, poor Mrs. Wilbert. There was a lot of phone calls to her, like, what do I do now? Anyway, so yeah, I think that's important. And I don't want to sound melodramatic, but hope I have a few years to live. And I'm really trying to dedicate my life, not to going back, because people say, "Oh, you're just an old man. You want to?" No, I don't want to go back. We've got to stay contemporary, but we've got to re-energize and re-emphasize this aspect and get away from specialization. People say, "What's your specialty?" I specialize in being a generalist. I competed in the decathlon. I played American football before, and the ability to connect seemingly disparate things is crucial. And the more you zero in and specialize, the less you become aware of all the various connections out around you.
I had a recruiter on called David Slemon, who's an English guy but does a lot of work with the Football Association over here, but I think he's also venturing into the US with performance director roles and MLS and whatnot. He described a diagram that he's got on his website, the T-shape. So multiple general components that you're good in at the top, and then one specific thread that you become a specialist in. And hopefully you would be in an organization where that T is offset depending on who you are, and all of a sudden you've got this big blob of expertise in these various different specialisms. Is that something that you think is the way to go, to have these these generalists who have a specialist area versus what we have now, which is potentially the flip side, which is the big, thick area, which is the specialism, then not much substance when it comes to the generalism?
I think I've seen that. I'm going to take notes on that. That the T model is really good. So you have something that you're very, very proficient in, and I think I've been coaching 53 years, as you accumulate years of experience, that it becomes more, there's a few other, I don't know what the other thing, it becomes an M or something, where you go down on certain areas as you progress through your career. But absolutely, because you've got to communicate, and you've got to work together with other people. Our jobs are to work together with other people, other professionals, to make the athletes better. So what are you doing to get better at getting better so the athletes can get better? Okay. And so if you're so specialized that you can only talk about or deal with one aspect, you're shortchanging the athletes you're working with, and it's plus somebody has to coordinate this. Somebody has to coordinate this too, and I've often said, now we just have problems getting people even in the same room, much less communicating the way many in collegiate here, and I'll talk about the States, and collegiate and professional environments, and I'm very aware of what's happening over there and Australia. I mean, it's not even silos anymore. It's little islands with big gaps of water in between, with no boats running between the islands, So, uh, But anyway, I hope that doesn't sound negative, but and it's a I think it should be honestly an upfront objective of a sporting organization. I'm a big fan of McGowan's book Essentialism, but that's not specialization. That's figuring out, okay, we've got a mission to do. We've got to get this team ready for the European Championships in 16 weeks or whatever. Okay, how am I going to marshal my resources? Who's gonna connect? Obviously the head coach is the head sport coach is the captain of the ship because he's the ultimate person responsible. But then how do we marshal all these things to make the athlete better, right? Sometimes I think it's not producing more spreadsheets. Those are fine, they're neat, but it's it's that. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And I've got a little bit of a theory why people go down that and probably feel more comfortable in that specialism area. Like, I am this guy, and it's driven by society and potentially a little bit of a social media. I am a speed guy. I am the change of direction guy. I am the jump guy. Like, it's getting into the minutiae of like physical qualities and then putting the so-and-so guy. Like, it's a little bit weird when you actually think about it. But people do feel comfortable in that specialism because it's nice and neat.
Yeah.
It's nice and compact. It's not this messy world that we live in because they've actually put themselves in a box which is nice and comfortable and square and neat, like I say. So, yeah, I mean, the question would be, is that a way that we've, as practitioners, as professionals, actually trying to look after ourselves and easily be able to potentially justify why we're there and what we're doing because we are in this box?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, sport is a reflection of society, and so if you go to a doctor now, I know we don't have national health care here, but I don't know what we have. We have chaos is what we have. But, I mean, they're uber specialized. And I try to find, I live in Sarasota, Florida, which is God's waiting room. I mean, I'm a young person here and there's newlyweds and nearly deads. And I try to find doctors that are, in their 50s and 60s who have a better grasp of health, the human body and health in general. So it just reflects, and it reflects education. So you used to have psychology, and then you used to have anthropology and that, and now within those you've got cognitive neuroscience, blah 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 blah, and then you have over in the biology department you have somebody who's now and like the whole hamstring issue, which I'm passionate about how screwed up this has become. We got people studying fascicle length. And I'm thinking, pardon my French, but shit, I'm a coach. I got to get that guy better. Yes, it's a nice trivia question that this exercise improves fascicle length. But let's zoom out and look at the pelvis. Let's look at that adductor magnus. Let's look at how everything works together. And so we've painted ourselves into this proverbial corner by not being able to communicate with other experts or other disciplines. You mentioned change of direction. Since you asked me those questions, I've been more aware and I look at this stuff and I go, okay, the number one question I'm going to ask you, Rob, is how do you teach this stuff? Is it making the athlete better? You're making everything so robotic and so cognitive. They get on the field. If they're not confused, thank God maybe they didn't listen, and just because the game or sport, I don't care if it's an 800 meters, 100 meters, that competitive cauldron is chaos. And we have to prepare the athlete to be adaptable and robust in chaotic situations. Now, that doesn't mean every training session is chaos, but it's not breaking everything down into, okay, the foot does this, the ankle does this. Yeah, that's cool. it's neat to know. I've gone through that phase, and sometimes I like to go back and talk about that stuff. But doggone it, I got to see how everything connects. Okay, how toenails to fingernails, how everything syncs, links, and coordinates. Okay, and it's complex in one sense, but it's a lot of people are talking about implicit versus explicit learning and that kind of stuff. Well, it is. We know now that the more explicit you make things, the less um, and the more you talk like we're talking, the less learning goes on. You notice I'm using my hands, and I'm reading a really cool book right now called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. She's a science journalist, but she's talking about I think every coach ought to read it, every teacher, every parent ought to read it. It's more about how we learn, and really we don't learn with the brain, we learn with our bodies. Well, that just plays right into our wheelhouse, doesn't it? As professionals that are dealing with movement, and movement at the highest level, which is so cool. I mean, we're so lucky to do what we do. Even if you're working with 12 or 13-year-olds, that's movement at the highest level at that age. And it's so cool to be able to impact that, isn't it? You know, but you don't impact it by turning them into robots. Sorry, I got on a rant, but
No. It's fine. It was pretty driven by me and the points that I sent over, and that were just from my observations that these intricacies, and this is me being again jumping on the bandwagon, your bandwagon, have been maybe a little bit cynical. Like you go deep and you sell this, and sell is probably the key word here. These very intricate details of a specific movement, change direction being one, and you pair them with other intricate, very complicated, small parts of the movement, and it comes. Probably when I was saying this, I'm thinking of a phrase that my dad used to say, or still does, that bullshit baffles brains, and it's diving into such intricacy to complicate people to go, oh wow, this guy or girl's got all the answers. Like, let's dive into this and let's pay them some money. Where actually the detail is obviously great, but it's so important to be able to step back every now and again, or very regularly, to look at the whole picture rather than like instead of a 45 degrees, it should be 50, and let's all freak out because we're 5 degrees off. So yeah, that's
well,
that's
you
pretty much.
asked in your preparatory questions, real quick. For me, and I have collaborate with a great professional, Jim Radcliffe, and we're really good friends too. And he's a little younger than me, but he's a product of the same. He's trained as a teacher. But so we start with wheel drill, which is stance and first step, and then you go to organ sway drill, which Jimmy invented. Then you go to a dot drill, where you learn to project your center of mass. Then you go to a double dot, which is there's two dots 3 meters apart. So you learn to project your center of mass, accelerate, decelerate, and maybe reaccelerate. And then you learn speed cuts and power cuts, and you play the game. And then you deconstruct. Like just sometimes I had a young tennis player a few years ago, and one of her cues was I wasn't with her when she played, but her coach came and we were working on this, and I said, okay, just remind her between points this one particular thing is sway drill. Just say sway drill, and that'll cue what she needs to do. That's all. Don't make it more complicated. I mean, she was 5'2", tough little girl, and nationally ranked and all of that. I mean, I know what optimum angles are. I know all that stuff. I've read all that research, but that you gotta get it out of the athlete. So I hope that makes sense. So, but simplify it. And then if you start having problems in the complexity of the game, what do? You go back to maybe, depending on what it is, you dial back down, and you go back through the progression. Maybe you have to, if it's a baseball player, right away we have to go right back to stance and first step, or a cricket player, something like that. And then we go back up, on that. So it's a self-correcting syllogism almost, is what it works out to be. So.
let's have a little chat about the hamstring stuff that you mentioned about, and you were clearly clearly some passion there. Let's dive in. So, where did it all go wrong? And that was potentially your terminology that you use. What are the problems that we're seeing in this area, and more importantly, how can we as coaches navigate this information and put ourselves accept it, like accept the viewpoints, what you just mentioned about people studying fascicle length and whatnot, understand that, but then use it for what it is, and kind of create our own path to understanding and try to understand and better the athlete's risk of not having a hamstring injury.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. First of all, Nordic hamstring, when I was first exposed to it, 1973, 74, we called it the gaucho hamstring exercises. The name of the team at UCSB was the Gauchos, and we didn't have a leg. That's where we all trained. I trained for decathlon at the time, and we didn't have a leg curl machine, so we thought we were, deficient. And so the coach used a sit-up board, anchored our feet under the sit-up board, and we did the Nordic hamstring curl. Well, within 3 weeks, one guy was out for the year with a hamstring avulsion tear, and 2 other guys had pulled their hamstring, and I just was dumb enough to stop doing it because I couldn't teach the next day. I was so sore, and we were only doing, like 8 reps and that. So that put it away. And then I saw it later on, about 10 years later, and if you go back in old physical education literature and that, you'll see the movement being done in gymnastics literature and that. And then it became the Russian hamstring curl and then the Nordic hamstring curl. So the original study done in Norway, the original study was flawed. And I saw that all of a sudden I saw this, and this is the answer to hamstring pulls. And it was one group did normal soccer training, and you're an ex-football player. What's normal soccer training? I don't know what normal. I mean, I've coached from youth soccer on up to the World Cup level. I don't know what normal soccer training is. And the other group did normal soccer training and Nordic hamstring curl once a week, and it was like 1,000. And it was a huge ant. And the people that did Nordic had less hamstring injuries than the people that did. Well, I mean, how did this get embedded in the literature? But once it's embedded in peer-reviewed literature, and then it spun off, and it spun off, and it spun off, and then so fast forward to that was around 99. You fast forward about 2015, and I have a folder that thick of all the hamstring research, and I read it and I shake my head, and I look at the numbers, like the AFL. The Nordic Hamstring League, Australian Rules Football, in parentheses, it's the Nordic Hamstring League. It was all adopted. And every year in the last 10 years, their hamstring injuries have gone up. It's a perfect 45-degree angle. Look, I'm just a dumb old coach and a teacher. But when you tell me that Nordic hamstring exercise reduces hamstring injuries 50%, then, because a lot of leagues don't publicize that data, by the way. That's why I'm using them as an example. We only know from what we read in the newspaper. And they're all doing it. My question is, wouldn't you question the exercise? And I asked these guys, I had a confrontational phone call with these guys, the original guys. And they said, your experience doesn't count. That's type 1, this is peer-reviewed research. Well, so what? Look at the teams that don't have hamstring problems and see what they're doing and what they're not doing. Okay, that's common sense. That's not type 1 or top 5 research or something. Okay, so everywhere now, and so what I direct, and I'll end this rant. I've gotten to know Franco and Pellizieri, and who really went after the chronic acute workload ratio, by the way, too, which has led to the hamstring issue. Because if you don't work hard and sprint all out, you're going to be exposed to more hamstring injuries because you're asking the game to sprint all out. Well, there's a pre-publication. This is why methods matter in meta-analysis. A reappraisal showed inconclusive injury preventive effect of Nordic hamstring exercises. It's just come out. And it's brilliant. It's a meta-analysis, and it points out the flaws that dumb coach Vern has been saying. So look, and I don't want to jinx any of the people that I work with or myself. In my career of 53 years, I've had 3 hamstring injuries myself, and I'll explain those in a minute. Aside from that, I've had 5 with the White Sox and 1, okay, in the White Sox in 9 years. And what did we do? We did no leg curls. We did no leg extensions. We did various types of squats. We did a boatload of lunging in multiple planes, and we did low and high step ups, and we sprinted. Okay. The times I pulled my hamstring were when I was experimenting with stuff, you know, to try different things. So I'm a guinea. That was something that I learned a long time ago. So that's no excuse, but I was doing isolated hamstring work just to see what would happen. Well, I pulled, and one of them was real bad down at the insertion behind the knee, so that's where I stand on this, and it's I'm a pariah. There's places in Australia where they have my picture up with a target and they throw darts at it, and I'm going, that's okay, guys, just keep doing what you're doing. And so the guys at Australian Catholic University did a EMG study on. They looked at various exercises, and they looked at lunge, they looked at step up, and they say, well, we got the highest hamstring activation on Nordic hamstring curl. Well, of course you did. First of all, you only did anterior lunges. You didn't do frontal plane lunges. You didn't do frontal plane step ups. And if you isolate a muscle, I learned from a colleague of mine, when you use EMG on an individual muscle, it's either screaming or singing. Okay, it screams when you isolate it because it's not supposed to do that in the real world. It sings when you emphasize intramuscular coordination and you work that hamstring, with all the rest of those muscles, which you do in lunges and in step ups. So that's the other fallacy that we have. Well, and I was part of a study, one of the original gait studies done in 1981, and people can look it up. I can't remember the journal, but Dr. Roger Mann, MD, and John Hagee, who was a biomedical engineer at Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children. And it was like a 3-year study, and some of my athletes at Cal Berkeley, and I was one of the studies. And we did force platform analysis and EMG. It was a landmark gait study as to how the hamstring works. And it works to decelerate the lower leg and extend the hip. It works a little bit isometrically, then it shuts off, works again, and then there's an instantaneous isometric action just before contact. Well, immediately that changed. So that changed my thinking. Gosh, I've got to do more stuff where I coordinate the hamstrings. I don't train. That was kind of the aha moment in me of training movements, not muscles. So that's a long-winded answer, but I hope it makes sense. And all I want is, look, I have no commercial interest in the Nordboard or any of this stuff. I just want people to think about what they're doing and see the world with little kids' eyes. Go out on the field and watch what your player has to do and say, is this preparing them? Sure, there's eccentric action, but it's not slow eccentric action like in the Nordic hamstring curl. I'm going to estimate close to 800 degrees per second or higher, much higher probably. Yeah. That's
Cool.
my story.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good. What I'd love to get your thoughts on, Vern, is, and I've mentioned it a few times in the podcast, is this increased influence of track coaches on team sport coaches when it comes to developing speed. And again, I've said it a million times, but if you're a decent track coach and you are good at marketing, they should be absolutely killing it now, because team sport coaches are absolutely lapping it up, whether it be online certifications, whether it be in-person events, online events, like they're going mad for it. So I'd love to get your opinion on what team sport coaches should be taken away from track coaches when it comes to developing speed. We've had a couple of people on from the track side, but we've also had people on like a Robin Thorpe, for example, who was at Manchester United, who was basically saying it's the team sport coaches who are the best ones to be implementing this. Yes, take the basics from track, but don't get too in the weeds of what these guys are talking about, because you're the expert, you're in the team sports setting. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Oh boy. I mean, I'm I'm a track coach. I mean, my specialty was combined events, and which is everything, right? And I'm enamored with speed. I've worked in, you name it, professional baseball, professional soccer. And the thing that I learned right away, because I went from track and field to professional baseball, I tried to bring the track concepts, even some of the drills and that, and it fell flat on its face because the players right away realized they were learning drills, they weren't getting faster. And then I immersed myself in the game. I learned the game, just like, in that. And what kind of speed do you need in that? And, it's a lot of these. So the answer is it's not new. So this started, if you go back in English football, even in the 80s, 70s, some of the top track and field coaches at the time were brought in ad hoc by various clubs during preseason. Preseason was different then, as you know. And then the Italians were the first to really they brought Carlo Vittori in. I believe it was AC Milan. I may misspeak, to actually be their fitness coach. That was Pietro Manea's coach, who was the world record holder. But his, I think he was a very bright guy. He learned the game. He knew the game. So I think he did a pretty effective job of helping, because we had a player on the Tampa Bay Mutiny because in Europe they call all the fitness guys prof, and he goes, prof, he goes, you sound a lot like Professor Vittori. And I go, really, that's an honor, and he said, yeah, because we did a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I see a lot of like with the American World Cup team in Brazil, they're doing weighted sled pulls in the middle of the frickin' competition. I mean, think about that. Well, first of all, why are you doing weighted sled pulls with a soccer player anyway? Okay. Oh, we're working on acceleration. Well, you know what? There's simpler ways to work on acceleration. I've got a simple progression that we use with a football player that's literally 3 steps for 3 steps, and then you're to the ball or you're to the opponent. Okay. And by the way, soccer and most sports are not just acceleration and deceleration, they're top end speed. Now, you may not be running 12.4 meters per second like Usain Bolt, but doggone it, you're a winger in soccer in the EPL on those beautiful pitches. And if you're not hitting 9.8 meters per second for 3 or 4 steps, you're not going to be on the pitch. So what are we doing to prepare them for that? Okay. And so what we do is we take them away from the pitch and we basically do track practice. Well, the thing about that is you have to understand how to adapt your stride. Okay. In team sports, you don't accelerate to top speed, you accelerate to optimum speed, and you have less distance to accelerate. So you have to adapt the concepts and adapt the principles. And I agree with your person from Man U. I want somebody who knows the game to be, to integrate speed as part of the whole development. So I hate to make a blanket statement, because I know there's some good people, I don't want to, in England that have done a decent job, but when I see these blanket things like, if you need to get faster, find a track coach. Well, hold on. What are you getting faster for? Now, if you want to improve your testing speed, okay, like to get signed, well, maybe get a track coach, but that may not carry over to the game. Messi will test in the lower third of any population of soccer players that you do, but he doesn't lose very much when he gets on the field, and he understands the concept of game speed, how to read the game and position himself. So does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. I've got a follow on from that, Vern. So just you mentioned about adapting the principles. So what does that look like in practice?
well,
Taking what a track coach would do versus what a team coach
yeah,
would do
very.
to improve speed.
There's too many drills in track too, by the way. And what I see, we've gotten enamored with drills, and drills do not equal skills. So it's a few basic positions where you're working on the foot down from above. You're working on posture, arm action, leg action, and you're working in multiple directions. So what one of the things I like to do is just with a little bit of movement, and then I put a hoop down and say, like 5 meters out, and say, bingo, accelerate, hit that with your right foot, accelerate, hit that with your left foot, and then we'll add a ball to it right away, where they're going to have to accelerate, hit the hoop with whatever foot, receive a ball, turn, and send the run and go back, so that you're always connecting the discrete speed action with some soccer action. You see what I'm saying? And so if you're playing small-sided games, which is also the downfall of a lot of rugby and soccer right now, the cause of a lot of injuries, you need to somehow figure out how to open one game up where they have to sprint 30 meters or 20 meters, and you have to figure out. A colleague of mine, he was the only other fitness coach in the MLS when it started in '96. Jim Liston's now with the LA Galaxy. He was with Toronto and he started with the Galaxy. Jim's a good dude and he's really smart. And I remember him and I having this conversation at the MLS. It was a training thing in '98, and he and I were the only guys that would have guys sprint all out. You pick the person. So we build them up to it, and you start out with left, right, left as fast as you can go. And then you go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right, left, and until you're up to 20 or 30 meters. So you learn how to, and then you have to look over your shoulder, because you're going to receive a ball, and then you run curve sprints, run the center circle, run half the center circle, and then have to go down the midline, things like that. That's what you do to get faster for soccer, and that's what you do to prevent hamstring injuries.
I think, again, I always fall back on social media's impact on what people do and how that drives practice. And I think having the drills, and like you said, there's too many drills in track. I think there's definitely a shift towards drills looking perfect on camera to put on Instagram, to put on Twitter, to make... You don't see the rest, but you see the 15-second drill that looks absolutely perfect versus the chaos of what the game actually is. Would you agree there that that's actually driving practice, what's going on with elite athletes?
Cool. I mean, I watch the various soccer channels, and they always show what they do during the week. And plus a lot of the stuff, like, look, somebody said, do you use ladders? Well, we use ladders. We probably overused ladders 20 years ago. I still use a ladder, but I use a five-rung ladder, okay? And I make you sprint for five or 10 meters, and then you have to approach the ladder. So you have to close your stride down, and then you have to reaccelerate. That's the game, not a ladder. And you see these $1 million players jogging through this stuff, just going half ass. So what good does that do? You're just, the only people who have made millions, billions of dollars with just do it is Nike. I hate Nike. Don't just do it. Do it better, and do it well if you want to get better, and that's, but it's social media is going to be hard. It might be the downfall of our country. Hell, we got an idiot elected president with it, and, so I don't know, but it's great. I mean, I have gotten more good stuff off of Twitter because of who you follow, by the way. Believe me, ideas, research studies, contacts. Hey, I saw you doing this. Can I contact you? Why are you doing it? Where do you put it in practice? Because I don't want to disparage drills. The thing about drills is you have to know. You can see my library behind me. I have I have, and that's only a small part of it. There's a closet back there with full of binders from 1962 on, and it's finding the appropriate drill for the appropriate individual in the right situation. It's like a pretty girl. It's real easy to fall in love with the drill, and then you get to know her and you go, oh man, she can't put a sentence together or something like that, and then you got to break up, and so understand what the drills do. That's the thing. A lot of track coaches come in and they baffle them with bullshit. Like this will do this, this will do this. Like with young soccer players, one of the biggest things that I've always done is towing. Teach them what running fast feels like, because they don't know what, I'm talking about 12, 13, 14-year-old. I've actually done that with veteran pro players that lost speed, and built them up so they could feel that rhythm, that tempo again, and it gave them a confidence that they could, well, in one case, play a couple of more years, and that. So anyway,
just going back to the social media stuff, and with all seriousness, how big of an issue is, and it can be really positive based on the people you follow. It's up to you whether it's a positive, you or anyone, whether it's a positive experience or a negative experience because of who you follow and who actually you interact with. But there's a growing, and there has been for a couple of years, a growing area of social media that is driven by the gurus, driven by people who are talking about coaching that potentially don't do that much coaching. And they get a following. That instantly, with younger coaches, potentially means respect, and the cycle continues. And this ego and this thing, this keyboard coach, actually moves into having some real influence on people again that have got power over elite athletes and have been driven by this guy who's online they don't know, who's feeding them information. That's a big problem, in my opinion.
It's a huge problem. And, I run into this. I haven't been coaching the last 8 weeks because of COVID here. And it's kind of out of respect for me with the local swim team. I've worked a lot in swimming, dry land and swimming, hands-on a lot in the last, well, since 2002, but as well as other sports. But so our local swim team. And so I haven't seen it. Now we had our Emma Wyatt win the silver medal in the 400 IM, and I never once would put one of her workouts online. People would say, "Well, why?" Out of respect to Emma, and I put a few pictures of our kids in morning sessions, saying, like, what's the rest of the world doing? That's kids today will get up at 5:30 in the morning and do great work, and and that. But I also, listening to the kids, talk to them. I've gotten to know them really well. We have a book club with them, and that I lead, and gotten to know. It's a really. I only work now with the senior group, so we call our national team group. We've got 3 or 4 kids that are on the U.S. national team, and they're under 18, usually 14 to 18. And I listen to them talk when they come. I want them to come, and and they're just so influenced by Instagram and what's put. Did you see that? Say the sharks were the sharks. So the minnows someplace else. Did you see what they were doing? Yeah. Does that make you better? It makes you tired, And they're influenced, and who's really influenced by social media is the parents of that age group. But then you have the more mature athlete that's influenced, and you have young coaches that are influenced by these guys, and they're out there. They're make I make a living. My living is made through coaching and but not online coaching. If I can't coach you in person, I'm not doing it, and I don't like to. I don't. We in our network, in our game network, we have access to an extensive video library of various, and that. But there's a specific context. So, yeah, it's a huge problem, just like it is in the broader world. There's no way to vet this stuff, and they're self-proclaimed experts. I mean, it just get a website. It used to be a website, but now get an Instagram account or a TikTok account, and you put enough stuff on there, and it's number of likes. One guy was bragging about the number of likes, and I don't know how many contacts I have on Twitter. I don't give a damn. I got on it basically to help, to share ideas and to promote game, to be honest with you. But it's been more now to share ideas. I'm a shitty promoter of game. And somebody said, my daughter, who's into sports marketing, said, "Dad, you've got a lot of followers." Okay, that's great, Peanut, but that's not the goal. It's to exchange ideas. So yeah, I don't know what the solution is because we can't go back. We can't shut the we can't shut this off. Look what's happened. Look what's happening what's come out in the last 3 weeks about Facebook. Last 2 weeks about Facebook. I mean, and if government can't shut it off, how are we going to do it? We just have to, Rob. We just have to educate. We have to be willing to call people out. And how much are you charging for that? I mean, I've told people just call me. I'll share stuff with you. I won't give you work. Sometimes I won't give you workouts because those workouts were made up for that particular individual or that particular team or whatever. But I'll certainly give you examples or talk to you, and share with you because our goal should be to professionalize what we do. I've heard you before use the word industry. I abhor the word industry. If I wanted to be in an industry, I would have gotten a hard hat and joined a union and worked for school or something like that. But we need to be professionals. Teachers are professionals. Coaches should be professionals. Like that. But we're not elevating ourselves to a profession. The more we lower ourselves to some of this stupid stuff, that's really just nonsense. I'm not going to mention any names, but these more power to you. Make money, but think about the effect that you're having. I think that's really important. Really important. Yeah.
So for the last few minutes, let's flip this conversation into the positives of our industry and what potential like opportunities for those younger coaches in our industry that you see in the next 5 to 10 years.
Just tremendous opportunities for people out there, for young coaches to take a step back. Don't be in a hurry. Don't do more free unpaid internships, but find a situation where you can coach. There's only in the EPL, there's 26, there's only X number of jobs at the highest level, but you can have such a great impact at the youth and the high school level, and you can make a really good living. You can make a really good living, and you're not going to be fired when the manager's fired, And so there's tremendous opportunities out there to create your own situation within. And in my crystal ball, we have seen part of the problem that we have at the higher levels is we don't have the movement skills that are developed in physical education. That physical education is going to come back in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's going to represent opportunities. It's going to be more linked to sport than maybe it was into the school. So broaden your base of knowledge. Certainly get out and have as many experiences as you can. Go observe really good coaches coach, not just S&C or athletic development coaches, but go watch a great netball coach. You have really some good field hockey coaches in England or here. Go watch, I mean, that, and then you say, well, what can I take away from that? That's going to help me make me better in the weight room, better out on the field, and broaden your skills. Broaden your skills so you're more marketable. If you're highly specialized, I don't think you're going to be as marketable. And think of that team model that you said. I like that. Rob, I'll give you full credit. I'm going to use that. Where you have an area where you're really proficient. I know when I hired people, my biggest weakness I always felt was nutrition. So I always wanted to find an assistant who was more proficient in that area, or maybe now it would be if I were hiring staff, I would try to find somebody who's a little more proficient in analytics and GPS and some of that kind of stuff. It's just hard for an old guy to to learn a whole new skill set. I mean, I know what questions to ask, but I want somebody who's really been trained in that too. So I have a colleague, Greg Gatz, who's the head Olympic sport strength and conditioning coach or athletic development coach at University of North Carolina, and he has 4 assistants, and they bring in 2 or 3 interns each year, and they do a wonderful job of with those interns. There was actually I get online with them. He had a couple of guys from England, and of really broadening their skills. So this week you're going to hone in on the speed element. Next week you're going to hone in on the strength element. Next week you're going to hone in on the recovery element, and then we'll put it all together because you're there for a semester or something like that. So no, I'm optimistic, and for all of you, all of the younger people in the field, if you can just we pointed out the negatives, and just be aware of that. And and my advice too is read. I'm a voracious reader. Read, get outside your own sport specialty. I mean, I just ordered a book on not a technical book on cricket, but I've gotten enamored with cricket working with the Trinidad Tobago Cricket Board of years ago, and now we Dean Benton really did a great job with help me, Elise Perry, who was the female cricketer of the last decade, bringing her back from a hamstring injury that was a traumatic. If you saw the movie the Record, I mean, it was not preventable. But then they tried to rehab her on a damn Nord board, and she kept not getting better until she went to Dean and really learned how to sprint, too. So anyway, but no, there's great opportunities, but be ready to take advantage of them, too.
Absolutely, completely agree. I think it's a positive time to be in this industry when opportunities, although the competition is high, there's never been as many opportunities, especially as strength and conditioning becomes, this is just on the strength and conditioning track, becomes more of a buzzword that is in every household because people are reading it in papers and wondering what it is. And, I think it's a good time to be around. But you don't find many Americans into cricket, Vern.
No, it's really kind of interesting because we've got a lot of expats here, right? You think of all the British Commonwealth countries, and when I was a little kid in Santa Barbara, there was a Hope Ranches where the rich people lived, and I didn't know what it was. We'd go for a ride out there on Sundays, and there was all these guys out there with dressed in white long pants, and they were playing cricket, and then I got a little older and I looked, and it was a pretty interesting mix. You could see there was some Indians, and and that it's a really, particularly now the T20 and that it's a really interesting game. It will come here, just like rugby sevens are really becoming popular here, and T20 is much more fun game, or big bash cricket, than watching American baseball. Oh, it's tremendous. Yeah. So there's a lot, that's the thing. And that's the thing. The other thing to think about for the young coaches today, look beyond the high profile sports. I mean, the high, I don't, that's not the right word, because cricket, I just said this to somebody the other day, cricket's bigger worldwide than baseball is. You think of, you go anywhere. I was in Cairo, and it was a really slum area, and these kids are playing cricket, or soccer, football, so, but look beyond some of the traditional sports for opportunity, right now with Gain Swimming, we had 20% of the men and women on the American swim team either in their development stage or presently use the Gain system. And people don't look at swimming. I can't. There's college strength and conditioning coaches. They don't want to work with swimming. They don't want to lift heavy. Well, they don't have to lift heavy, but they have to get stronger. So endeavor to understand the sport, because there's a lot of swimmers out there, if you're thinking business, so anyway, I could go on forever.
No, that's great, Vern. Thank you very much. Now, I'll just little wrap up. Thank you very much for your time this morning to have a little chat. But just more importantly, where can people get to know more about the Gain Network, more about you, your travels, your writing, wherever? Yeah, what's the best place?
Well, the Gain Network, the website is www. The Gain Network and .com, and there's pretty in-depth information there about when we were hoping to do in-person Gain. We do a Gain cast every 2 weeks. There's links online to that. And right now, because of COVID, we do a Gain masterclass where you can find that on the Gain Network. I'm fairly active on Twitter. It's at Coach Gambetta. And you can search for my name on Facebook. I post the same thing, and on LinkedIn. And my email is, I'm not afraid to give it out. I've probably been get enough hate mail and good mail and that. Is gstcoach@gmail.com. Yeah. And
Amazing.
I'm not a very good email responder. In fact, I'm reading a really good book right now by Cal Newport about email and how to, and I check it only twice a day now, but a lot of times.
What's the book called, Vern?
I can't remember the title of it. It's
Newport, is it?
Cal Newport, yeah. His best book is Deep Work, but this is
Yes.
it might be something like The End of Email or something like that. And he really he's a professor at George Washington University. But no, so contact me, and I might just say, well, if you're for WhatsApp or something like that, and we'll just talk. We just try to respect each other's time. So I'm interested in seeing people get better and athletes get better, and and giving back. I have been an incredibly fortunate person throughout my career to have great mentors, great coaches myself, and to work with just some the best athletes of two, and some people you've never heard of that were just really were just tremendous people. So that's the joy of what we do. So anyway.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Vern. I'll let you go. Crack on with your day, but really appreciate your time, and it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Speak soon.